Aloha. With this video, I really wanted to go into keep going off of the last video and take it a step even further into some of the things that I might have left out on purpose, just to focus on the few subjects that were in there to break it down. The last video going into kind of like the war on every man, woman, and child, and then take it into like how this war is carried out and like what's going on. And I mean, I've broken it down a few ways many other times, but this is another kind of like up-to-date style, and I wanted to take it a step even further into the relationships that we have with ourselves, with our families, with our culture, with society as a whole, and that whole storyline, that whole relationship with the overall mind control program of pretty much complete and total dominance over the masses of people on the earth, the consciousness of people being locked down into a particular frame of mind, a particular frequency, vibration, whatever you want to call it. The effect that has been brought about by the causes of this controlling of your world, of our world, the effects and the causes are not as easy to see. We don't really pay attention to them, and this is on purpose. You can't really see a lot of the things that are going on because they're hidden in plain sight from one perspective. On the other perspective, we don't really, a lot of the times, we kind of get locked into our own frames of mind, our own ideas of how things are, what they should be like, and what's really going on in the world right now. A lot of the times we don't get to look at the macro scale of the world and how this system continues to grow. We don't look at those perspectives because the micro world is amplified in our reality to lock us down and have us fight ourselves. So you have the macro world of the haves and have-nots programming, but in that haves and have-nots programming, the main mechanism used to enslave people is to disempower them, to have them destroy themselves. So you have the self-destruction of the divine feminine through making the patriarchal system the system of interaction in our society and the overall engagement of the world. The beating down of the divine feminine, the woman, over so many years, making her a second-class citizen, is one of the big parts in the system. And this is what I was covering in the last video, and wanted to just go over it real quick before I move into what I'm going to talk about in this video. So you had the beating down. Before there was racism, there was sexism. They had to, like, this is the design of control, because you have the hemispheres, the left and right hemisphere of the feminine and the masculine in each individual. The overall expression of the feminine or the masculine in the physical reality is just one version of the complexities that we all are. So in order to understand how this system is enslaving the world, all you have to do is look at what's been going on and disassemble it. The thing that we get, a lot of people get caught up in is working with the system as if the system had anything to do with the universal laws of the balances of the relationship. Like I said 2 videos ago, the biggest hurdle that you have to get over when interacting with somebody talking about flat earth is their belief in the system. They believe so much in the system, not so much that they believe NASA because they're best friends and they grew up. I mean, consciously they're not really thinking like that, but subconsciously NASA, Barack Obama, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Bill Nye, Michio Kaku, the university system, the public education system, the so-called democratic and capitalistic society, the Western civilization, the colonial program, the military-industrial complex, the prison-industrial complex. All of those systems are everybody's best friend because those systems are accepted into this reality as the best thing since sliced bread. It's the best thing out there. This system is the evolutionary peak of this experience. This is the belief system of the mainstream reality. And that inherently tells you that the people in charge of this society, the so-called powers that be, are the evolutionary peak. The consciousness that is existing today is the evolutionary peak of our existence, of humanity, of whatever you want to call it. So that inherently, excuse me, makes you subconsciously and unconsciously sign off on everything that this system is doing, from the darkest of the dark to the ideas of the positive, or the light, and like the destructive intelligence and the creative intelligence within the overall macro creative intelligence that inhabits this dualistic system of light and dark, positive and negative, electric and magnetic, masculine and feminine, so on and so forth. You have systems within systems within systems within systems. And a lot of the times we get caught up within one version of one system because we get good at that. And then the artificial ego wants to take pride in that system. And then all of a sudden we're enveloping our world within a bubble, within a bubble, within a bubble. And we don't realize all of the systems that are actually the macrocosm to that microcosm that you've, bubbled yourself into. So to see how this program, or at least one version or step in the door of how this has been going on, one way is to not reinvent the wheel or not, like fight and that whole thing. I mean, it's a part of it, but one way to just step back and take a look at what's really going on in order to break down a lot of the barriers that keep people from realizing what's going on with the enslavement of the mass consciousness is to disassemble the world, the artificial synthetic world that this system has created. So all you have to do really is just kind of just observe with whatever kind of perspective that you have is the deepest you can go into your compassionate body, your empathic body, your human body, your soul, your mind, and your body, your physical body perspectives, tracing back as far as you can go outside of the limitations that this system has provided for you. So an idea of that is when people say like, oh, well, you don't like electronics, you don't like technology, you're using it right now, so you don't really have a problem with the Western world. That's a simple ass approach that somebody can take to something that's so complex. That's basically the Stockholm syndrome kicking into gear in order to defend its version that it's adopted of this mind control program. That's a slave default program. It's like a pop-up window. As soon as somebody says something and they feel a certain way based upon their beliefs in this system, what happens is that the default is to spam that individual's consciousness with a pop-up, like a spam window that says, you need to attack this individual because this thought process challenges the very nature of your reality. So this is why when you talk about flat earth to somebody who believes in heliocentrism, even though they don't believe it, they don't know that they believe it like that, when you bring it to that, you're challenging their universe. It's the same thing that happens with Democrats and Republicans, the whole supremacy program with racial relations, every single idea that's out there that can be played against itself within the idea or the perspective of the Hegelian dialectic. You can see that if you were just to break it down and observe it, you can do a lot more with perceiving this reality without fighting yourself. So as far as I've broken it down, just to keep it as simple as possible or as basic as possible so I can get into the actual topics that I wanted to talk about in this video, which this is a part of it, is basically from the last video, moving from the separation from the man and the woman, keeping the woman down, keeping the man up, keeping the society thinking and believing that it's all about separation, division, so on and so forth. Then they separate the family, the children from the mother and the father in many different ways. One way is through work, the way the society is designed. Another way is when they make a lot of these families, single mother families or single parent families. This is all on purpose, no different than the CIA installing drugs into the system. Like, these are all known facts. So if you understand that you are well aware that the government sponsored systems are installing some stuff like drugs into the community in order to have an effect, you have to realize that what caused that effect is the problem. It's not the side effect to the cause that is the problem. It's the effect. It's the cause that caused that effect. So it's the individual. Trace it back. A lot of people say follow the money. Well, follow the action. So what action has led up to what's going on today? So, and just put it on a board, put it on a whiteboard, and then start to disassemble yourself, your belief and your trust in this system. Because like I said, that's the biggest barrier. It's the biggest hurdle to helping people see, like, information in reference to flat earth, information in reference to dominance and control on a collective scale, the psychological programming, the alchemy that's going on in and around every single experience every day, from your commercials to your food, to your water, to your air, to your elements, to your idea of what you are, like the Homo sapien, to the idea of the universe that you live in, to the idea of intellect or education, politics, civilization. Like, when I say Western civilization, I have to say so-called Western civilization, because the entire Western civilization is not a civilization. It's never been civil. That's one of the main points, and one of the biggest barriers a lot of people can't get over is their belief and their love in this system. So once they've instilled that belief and that love in the individuals for so many decades, for so many generations, the so-called they don't have to do much anymore, because the people within that system are defending this enslavement program for them. So you can trace back all the way to the Maritime Admiralty system, the legal name programming, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, and you can start tearing down the system from that perspective. But always be cognizant at the same time of the origins of this system overall, how the Civil War was designed to make you think like these individuals who stole this land, who infected this land and just completely genocided the indigenous people, not only in the Americas, but across the earth. The people that came here and started telling you these are your forefathers, these are your documents, these are your laws of the world that you need to live up to. Those are all mind control programs, and they pretty much bully themselves into your reality so that you don't really have any other option than to play the games that they have provided for you to play. So this is an example of that. And this is an example of one example, because I'm going to go through a few examples of them, of the shallow layers of consciousness that are bombarding the people, the mass consciousness, to not allow themselves to break free of the social conditioning that is hitting us on a day-to-day basis. So you can see an example of that being with like Trump with his, like, every day you hear all the late night talk shows, all the mainstream media, all the alternative news, all your conspiracy theories, all of them center around the entertainer that is Donald Trump, because this entire political scene, this entire system is designed to entertain you into a belief system that you think is not only the only thing that can exist, but it's actually beneficial for you. So this system, the way it exists as a whole, is designed to make you, not only make you believe, but pretty much religiously follow these systems without question. Because if you empower yourself to question the very nature of this system, you will then start to empower yourself to disassemble this broken system. And that's the way the so-called powers that be need people to be, which is why your public education system and mind control programs like heliocentrism are designed to keep you from connecting on a layer that's outside, that exists outside of their little constraints, their little mind control programs. So that's after you have gotten to an equilibrium that allows you to start empowering yourself. See, people aren't even allowing themselves to get to a balance point in their hemispheres, or a balance point of themselves, or an acknowledgement of who and what they are, to get any kind of power, because the system is designed to keep you distracted and hating yourself and destroying yourself from the inside out. So before you can even get there, you have to realize that there's somewhere to get. And it doesn't exist inside the level of consciousness that created this mind control program overall. In order to challenge the system, you have to realize that the system exists. So like me, when I was in the Occupy protest time framing, I thought the system was based upon, only the money. It was like the Federal Reserve, I was aware that the government was completely corrupt at that time. But once I started to trace further beyond the psychological warfare, the fiat currency system, the maritime admiralty system, and the colonial system as a whole, then I started to step into the realm of the spiritual warfare that taps into the reasons of why and how this program is so effective and has been carried out to the extent that it has over many, not decades, but centuries. So you can trace back this system decades and centuries in the psychological warfare, but mostly in decades, because that's how people keep it fresh. That's how the system keeps this mind control program fresh, is by locking you into a system of confinement. For example, when you're a kid, you're confined until you're supposed to graduate high school. Then you're confined to higher education. Then you're confined by student loans and debt, and you're confined by the American dream. You're confined by all this, and it's sold to you as freedom. Your confinement is sold to you as freedom. The only way they can sell you slavery, confinement, is if they first tell you it's freedom. And a lot of people defend this idea of freedom because they haven't realized that the slave program envelops all of these ideas that we consider freedom in this Western so-called civilization that has a very definite beginning point. So once you trace back all of those beginning points, it doesn't stop there, it just keeps going. So I'm sharing different perspectives of how I've stepped there in different styles and relating it to up-to-date actions and activities that have been carried out by this system to help us, from how I'm saying it, to help us see how it's working against us. But from their perspective, they're carrying out all this Trump stuff, 9/11, heliocentrism, false flags, all of these events that are carried out. They're not carried out for the benefit of you. They're carried out for the benefit of the original illusion to expand itself. So to very quickly, because I've said it in many different videos, to very quickly breeze through and revisit what I was saying so I can get into what I want to talk about. The original design was to first separate the man from the woman by keeping the woman down, make the man more powerful in society so they can make all the rules based upon a linear interpretation of your reality. Split the entire consciousness in half, 50-50. If you cut it in half, then you can control it, or at least have the opportunity to control it over time. It's not going to be an overnight sort of thing. The people have to adopt their enslavement. They have to enslave themselves, and that's going to take time. And these non-physical entities, or this parasitic consciousness, has all the time in the world because it lives through the host that keeps reproducing itself without any kind of acknowledgement or understanding of what the spiritual warfare is. So the reproduction that keeps happening in society is reproducing empty vessels that, for lack of a better terminology, can be possessed by the original enslavement program that we call Western society, or the parasitic consciousness overall. So once they started to expand the idea that the woman ain't really shit, the woman is just a piece of shit, it's all about masculine godliness. It's about masculine godliness. And everything about the feminine energy is just dead. It doesn't exist. It's just, it doesn't matter. Everything is about the patriarchal programming. Once you do that, you basically you've sliced alchemy in half, the balance between science and magic, true science. So once they slice it in half, they have to worship one version of the reality. So you have the non-physical or the non-linear interpretation of the reality from the divine feminine, which is like the artistic or the magical expressions of alchemy, because you yourself are an alchemical expression of the universe. And that has something to do with the linear interpretations of true science, so the physical reality, like your elements and so on and so forth, the left hemisphere. And then you have the right hemisphere, which is the non-physical, subconscious, magnetic, non-linear, artistic, magical sort of expressions that are completely demonized. Once that completely has been demonized, then you can worship and install a new version of reality, which is this half-assed at best interpretation of the scientific observations of this reality, which is not scientific. It's scientism. It's a religion. It's design. As soon as you cut alchemy in half and only sell one side, which is so-called science, you have went from true science to a religion. That's what's being sold right now. And what covers the other bases are actual religions. So you have religions that cover the spiritual warfare, selling to you the idea that you are not underneath a spiritual warfare because you have a connection to the Most High, or whatever it is that you call it, through your religion. So that pretty much just kills your revolutionary responses to something like a spiritual warfare, because you pride yourself in something that the system is given to you that has a very definite design and effect on who and what you are and how you should be and exist in this reality. It's already prepackaged and you got locked down. No different than the education system is supposed to lock down your interpretation of what intelligence is in this reality. So you're locked down that way. On the physical scale, you're locked down with the idea that you're only physical, dense reality, scientism perspectives, heliocentric universe. You're locked into a separation program that has no concern for everything else that I explained that it was in reference to the other balance, the balances of this reality. So when that happens, when everything's been completely broken down, when everybody's been sliced in half, then you have inherent self-destruction. You're going to have people hate themselves because they don't know themselves. You're going to have people hating their families because they don't know. You have people filled up with families and people filled in cultures who don't know their families, don't know themselves, don't know their culture, and will inherently create chaos. Once that happens, you will destroy the culture. It's a virus. It's a parasite that just sends a shockwave through everything else, every layer of engagement, because you have half-minded people at best walking around thinking that they have a full grasp on reality. When that happens, you create a pride in a system that ultimately doesn't give a shit about anything other than its own self-preservation. The system itself is only concerned with its self-preservation. This is why you have to be bombarded by political bullshit every day. You have to have a pride in America, the United States of America. You have to have a pride in war brings peace. You have to have a pride in the system going to war to protect you. You have to have a pride in the values, which have no value in the first place because their foundations are shit. Over 500 treaties have been broken by your so-called forefathers in this entire Western civilization in this nation. So everything that you so-called honor is fucking bullshit, garbage from the get-go. It never had any honor. This system was never built upon honor. It was built upon control. It was built on chaos. And it was built on locking down and enslaving everybody from all perspectives, the soul, the mind, and the body. And it gets so complex, it gets into the complexities of how you even interpret your moment. Even how you raise your children. People don't see this. When people start seeing it like this, from this perspective, and some people are seeing it from this perspective, and this is why people are homeschooling their kids. They're realizing what's going on with public education. They're realizing what's going on with, the poisoning of the water systems, the chemtrails, the so-called conspiracy theories, the corruption of all systems of government, the corruption that is in and out within the entire system. This corruption it's gone full throttle, and it's got its tentacles in every single expression that mainstream or Western society has. And the only way you can do something to counteract that kind of system so it doesn't affect future generations as greatly as it impacts us today and people of our past is to first acknowledge that the system is that vast. Empower yourself, make some connections with who and what you are beyond the physical reality, and start connecting with the balances that this society, this parasitic consciousness has installed into the individual and the mass consciousness. Start reconnecting with those layers of reality on a deeper layer, so we don't allow our children and our future generations to repeat the patterns of self-destructive enslavement. Like, once you start to realize, and just like I said with flat earth, you can't really get into acknowledging that if at first you have first acknowledged the fact that this system has zero concern with true science. It has zero concern with empowering the people or educating the people in any kind of format. Any kind of education that's benefits, or any kind of so-called benefit in this system, is designed to have the illusion of evolution, the illusion of intelligence, the illusion of something beneficial for you. It's not. It's meant to make you into a battery. So, with this slide that you're looking at right now, this is one example. This is this example of limited consciousness, people believing into the system. So you can see this as people, priding themselves. Yeah, black girl magic, black boy joy. I've never even heard that before, but whatever. You can see these. It's easy to see this. A lot of people see this stuff and really don't pay any attention to it or pay any mind. But people who have already broken out of that shit, from people in that system, still a lot of people believe in the politics and so on and so forth. And this is how it makes you bring it into existence, pretty much manifested into this reality, based upon whatever layer of consciousness that you have adopted through your experience. So for people who are in this mainstream society, this affects people a lot. So you see all that, they pump it up, they make it in, and they have the celebrities making these damn videos talking about, oh yeah, you need to, Alabama, come together, Alabama, and then make us proud. Don't vote for the pedophile. Don't vote for the abuser. Vote for the other guy. This is what you're being faced with. It's like the same thing that happened with Trump and Hillary. And Bernie Sanders. The system, so that you don't pay attention to the system, you are locked into a belief system that's based upon choosing between two bags of shit. That gives you the illusion of freedom. That gives you the illusion of being actively engaged in your society. The actors, the TV shows, the news, the education system, the economics, so on and so forth, they make it real for you. So that's like people believing in a movie. So when you go and watch a movie in the theater, you know it's not real because that's a movie production. The thing is, people watch the news and they watch mainstream society as if it's real because the system has convinced them it's real. But as a matter of fact, the system is nothing more than a movie production. No different than a movie. It's only real because you make it real when you leave the theater. In this case, leaving the theater is leaving your social media platform, your CNN, MSNBC, your TYT, your Alex Jones. Those are the platforms that make it real for you. Whereas in Hollywood, they don't have to make it real for you because it's shown to you that it's entertainment. They have to have the idea of entertainment versus reality so that you can falsely differentiate between the two. You can't differentiate between the two when you only have one or the other because you need the contrast. So this is why you have fiction and science fiction, movies and politics, stuff like this, because it makes it more real for you, because you have the dichotomy of people going back and forth of, this is this and that's that. And then you have conspiracy, which is like the lubrication within those two relationships that makes it all, kind of like realistic for you. There's no friction there because you have it just smoothly works into your consciousness through your belief systems. So you have people who are looking into conspiracy theories and saying, oh, well, this is real, but that's not real. And this is real, but that's not real. And then you just have a more complex version of Democrats versus Republicans. That's what's happening with all this. And then they want to max it out with this fake news stuff. They want to keep a very definite control on the information by saying, well, this is fake and that's real. You have to realize this fake news, real news shit just came out hardcore within the last few years. Conspiracy theories have been around for a while. In fact, the CIA created that whole mentality back in like the late 60s, 70s to do the same thing that's happening today. So that's just like the algorithm of how this mind control program is working on many different levels. So this is a proof of how that works, because for the people who are understanding that this entire society, this entire this Western way of life is just a fraud. They're gangsters. They're thugs. These are the real gangsters. The real thugs are the ones wearing the suits and the ties. These are the real criminals and pirates that are out there and convincing you that you should hate yourself or hate these kind of people. Or this is what all that racist propaganda was back in the day. And people ask, like, why is there all this racism stuff in it? Because we're talking about mind control on this channel. You're talking about heliocentrism. You're not talking about flat versus globe. You're talking about mind control on the scale, on the worldwide scale. So if that's the case, then you have to be cognizant of all of the mind control programs that have existed and are existing today. And if you are not cognizant of all the mind control programs, then you're playing checkers while this system is playing three-tier chess, thinking that you're playing chess. You're not. You're making one move at a time because you've prided yourself thinking that, oh, this is it. Just the same way I did when I was in the Occupy protest time frame talking about, well, we just need to get the bankers to change this and do that. The system was never meant to be fixed. It was built broken so it can create broken people. So that's the difference between the consciousness of believing in the system and believing in yourself, pretty much stepping outside of the mind control programs and activating something within within you that isn't limited to this self-destructive programming. That's what I was saying in the last video, or two videos ago, of this whole artificial version of the third eye. They've convinced you that they are powerful enough to close your third eye. That's before people even realize what's going on. Like, that's some hardcore stuff. To make you think that your third eye was closed because they closed it. No, you can't give them that power. You don't give them that power. You better see a deeper perspective and realize that your third eye was never closed. Don't give them that power. Don't give them that platform, and realize that you have the responsibility to realize that it was never closed, and realize that they never had the power to do that in the first place. Then you step into a world of realizing how the systems are in and around, like the new age, like I was saying in reference to that artificial third eye stuff. You're taking a pride in reaction to, when you take the new age perspective of opening your third eye. That's where it becomes synthetic. That's where it becomes a new game. That's why the new age community as a whole is full of shit. Because it's a prescription drug in reaction to the lower vibrations of the mainstream society. They've created an escape mechanism and have called it an awakening. It's garbage. It's inherently dead. And it's very dangerous because a lot of people are buying into that programming, and the system itself is using that programming to install a new layer of mind control programming on a collective scale under the facade of love and light, since the system can no longer control people with the idea of fear and destruction and war and implosion. They have to shift gears. This is why you're seeing all this stuff. I saw something the other day, like that Amazon Prime commercial on YouTube. They're trying to make you love this program. Your phone's being a part of you, like an extension of you, pretty much. That's so not so you can love or be connected with your friends and family. That's so you can become dependent, codependent, not only on your phone, but on the system, on the people who provided that system for you. That's how this system protects its investment, which is the system itself, is to make you love it and be codependent upon it so that they can just maintain their artificial evolution program through your beliefs in their toys that they have given you, in the poison that they have wrapped in chocolate coated and wrapped and given to you, so it affects you later on down the line. You think you're happy, and people that are seeing fast food all over the place, they pride themselves in the fact that you can get a 99-cent whatever anywhere you go. But if you flip the script and realize that those fast food restaurants are not there for your convenience, not at all. They are there to kill you. Once you see that, you're going to be driving around this society a little bit more with a different set of eyes. Once you start driving around and looking at your surroundings from a different perspective, you're going to see a different intent. That's another way to break the system of belief or trust in this society, this Western civilization. Once you see those fast food restaurants as warriors, once you see that public education system as poison, once you see the politics as a whole, this Western civilization, so-called civilization, once you see that as a super villain, once you start take a stand and really plant yourself into your convictions of how you observe this reality. See, that's the thing with a lot of people get wishy-washy with all this shit. They have beliefs in it. I've researched that, but I can't let this go. See, that's the bullshit that allows people to be buying into the next evolution program, because they haven't formalized their convictions in this reality enough to empower themselves, let alone do something about this system affecting or attacking your future generations. The life expectancy of this program is 3 days. So-called Western civilization. They're keeping you alive so that you can maintain your production value. But you on your own, without this system, overall, millions and millions of people are truly living in an existence that has a deadline of 3 days. This is completely different than the perspective of the indigenous cultures. Not to say that the indigenous cultures were perfect. I have to say that every time because somebody's going to get in the comment section and start talking about understood. What I'm saying is that there were benefits in those societies, which is why they are beaten down so frequently. There were connections with this experience in those societies that are completely demonized today and forgotten about. So now that that is known, you have to realize, well, what are these systems that are in place to keep us from making those connections? Well, it's pretty obvious to see once you know which questions to ask. Once you start asking the right questions, then you can start getting the right answers for yourself. Not for the consciousness of the system, but for the consciousness of yourself that envelops this system. So, you can see this. They put these charts out there. They make them. They put these charts in your face to show you, to have an effect on you. You already know the voting program. It's already rigged. It's all set up. It's all designed to make you think you're engaged. You're not. You're playing a game. They need people. Once you start to disassemble which people they're talking to, by looking at what they're talking about, that's when you can see what kind of plans they're putting out there. So, you got this black girl magic stuff. You have this black economic stuff. You have the black conscious community. You just had your first black president. They had you thinking about the first woman president. Oh, what about a black woman president? So these are all these doggy treats that are being sold to the mass consciousness in order to maintain the system as a whole. Ain't got shit to do with your evolution, balances of nature, nothing. All of these programs are designed to lock you down. So, in order to do that, they can't just feed it to you one day. They have to feed it to you, spoon feed it to you day by day by day by day. By filling your perspectives with hatred, with fear, and giving you your ideas of love and protection and evolution and so on and so forth. All of these positives. They feed you negative and they feed you positive. But ultimately, you're not really paying attention to the what's being fed to you, let alone who's feeding you and what they are trying to feed you overall in the long run. We don't pay attention to that stuff. So this is what's happening right here, because people aren't going to ask, the majority of people aren't going to ask questions. They're just going to pride themselves in the celebrity world that has been spoon fed to them. So when you have people like, who is out there? Whatever, all these celebrities who would get on Instagram or Facebook and start making these quick videos talking about, well, Alabama, we need to come together to fight against a pedophile, like one pedophile in Alabama. You're not going to address the entire system? No, they're not going to do that. They don't want you to do that. They want you to pride yourself in the illusion. So, what this does, it creates hatred. It creates division. It also creates pride. So in this, you can see 65% white, so-called white people were voting for the so-called pedophile, while 95% of black men and women, so-called black men and women, were voting for the non-pedophile. Like, this is the stuff that you believe these numbers, you believe all this stuff, and it makes you have some kind of pride in this system. Like, people are celebrating now. Oh yeah. And then they were also got to realize they were also not celebrating. They were like completely in awe of how somebody like this could even be a candidate. But people who are growing up outside of this system, we already know that's the way. These are just the people that are getting caught because they're obvious. They're blatant about their actions. So they have to put these people out there in order to distract from the system itself. They're not talking about the people who are not being recognized for doing the same acts that these individuals are doing, which is actually the majority of people throughout the entire system itself. Not to include the system itself, knowing that this is New Rome. Everything that was going on in Rome is going on today. Even more so, in a more complex manner, to where people are defending it. And it's harder to see because now you have even your own family members who will fight you, who are fighting you about politics and Trump and all this other bullshit. That's how deep these tentacles of parasitism has gotten into the individual and the consciousness as a whole. So you have this chart. I've been looking at this chart for a long time, but anyway, this is, like I explained earlier, playing sex and playing race, because ultimately that's the name of the game, is to have control of the sexes, divide, conquer, and have control of races, divide, conquer, instead of educate and empower. You have divide and conquer. This is what was going on right now. These are the differences between the reality of society as a whole. Are you going to educate and empower, or are you going to divide and conquer? Well, we already know what this system is designed to do. And here's how it does it. So I'm just going to breeze through it so I can kind of like end this quickly. So you can see that this is how they trap you in. They have people hating things and loving things, and hating people and loving people based upon these mind control program charts that they put out there. And this makes it more real for you. Then you have politicians engaging in this, trusted politicians, along with the actors. These politicians are just actors. It's like the White House is like Hollywood Studios or some Universal Studios or some shit like that. Like this is all what it is. And then they make it more real by saying, by engaging your emotions into it. By saying, how many Diet Cokes did Trump consume while he gulped and waited for the defeat of his pedophile candidate? Hashtag swish swish. You see how like ridiculous this is getting? Hashtags, tweets. This is how the system makes it real for you, because people are vested into this reality. So they use their politicians, they use their actors, they use the social media, they use the news, they use mind control programs as a whole. And then in the overall, the end game, you're still in limbo. You're still in chaos, not knowing how to approach your reality at all. So then you have people who are saying, black women are not political mules to be used every time a mediocre white candidate needs to win. True statement. No amount of verbal appreciation will do us justice. Turn over the money, resources, and power, then we can talk. See, this is one statement that's bridging in to the idea that this entire system is completely corrupt. It's completely corrupt. But when you say something like this, people are so hopeless. So in their self-destructive program, so believing into the Federal Reserve, so believing into Western civilization, so believing into politics, their actors, and this voting shit as if it has any kind of real reality in their existence, they can't even entertain something like this. But this is the thing. This is another layer of it. It's not just black women. See, black women were used as political mules in this one example. But actually, the entire mass consciousness is being used as a political mule for Western civilization as a whole. And that's what's not being acknowledged. That's what's not being recognized. Because if you start to acknowledge and recognize this entire system from that perspective, that's when you start to empower yourself to rip it down. But they can't have that. So they got to put people out there like Maxine Waters and these actors and somebody else out there to make you believe in it. So everybody's a political mule in this system. Social media, mainstream media, everything is a political mule for Western so-called civilization as a whole. And once you start to recognize that that's the case, that's when individually and collectively, that's when all these false flags happen, when it happens collectively to distract you. But individually, the people who are in a position to do something about, who do have some kind of weight in that system, when they do speak up, like Malcolm, like the Black Panther Party, like anybody else who was taken out by this system, like the CIA or the government created COINTELPRO in order to infiltrate the Black Panthers, because they were addressing the perspective of this system deeper than this image that you're seeing right now. By any means necessary, they were going there. That's why they created that program. Individually, like these holistic doctors. See, this is not one of the holistic doctors. This is just another doctor who was taken out. But you can see as an example, and that correlates with this example, these holistic doctors who challenge the medical industry, which is big money, gangsters. They make money off of your sickness and disease. See, once you see that from that perspective, then you start to become a different person. It makes its money off of sickness and disease. That's that whole, like, standing in your convictions of reality. What's really going on here? Because you give yourself another responsibility of engaging in that reality once you take that stance. So these holistic doctors, like Dr. Sebi and all these other people who are out there curing cancer and doing all kinds of other things, these doctors are a direct threat to a big money bag within this entire program, and they will be taken out. This is just another example of one individual who was taken out. Meanwhile, you have, and look at the gap that's going on here. You have people still, millions and millions of people still getting behind Hillary Clinton because they are so disempowered that the only option that they have is to beg and pray / vote for their other enslaver, their next enslaver. Even if that slaver has been involved in pedophilia, like this like being a charged pedophile, or stealing billions of dollars from everybody after a disaster that has affected an entire nation of people. The Clinton Foundation, billions and billions of dollars stolen pretty much because of their corruption. Using the people that are being subjected to this corruption so they can make money off of them. Stand in that conviction and you'll see Hillary Clinton from a different perspective. You'll see the entire system who is aware of this information from a different perspective. Seeing that from that perspective is like seeing fast food restaurants from the perspective of them being murderers. The education system being an abusive babysitter. the political scene being seen as a bully, like an international bully in this school system we call Earth. Stealing and copying off of everybody else's work, beating the shit out of people, stealing their lunch money, making themselves out to be this giant success story when in fact they're empty, hollowed out parasites. And anybody who says anything other than that will be taken out. This is one of those guys. Because he himself actually said something about the corruption that was going on in Haiti. And there's a lot of other people that have been talking about it too. But I just wanted to share this as an example of how far people are really strayed away from the real truth of this, like a deeper truth of this situation that we're calling Western society and whatever else you want to call it. Then you have these other programs that are out there, just like they use the LGBT stuff, they blend it in with so-called black rights. They blend all this stuff in so that the outcome can be watered down. Just like the Civil Rights Act back in the day was put into place to attack what the Black Panthers were really talking about in reference to the corruption that is widespread. It was a doggy treat. So what they did is they didn't address human rights. They didn't address the depths of what we're talking about. They grabbed a little focus of that 100%, locked that 100% under the illusion of, or locked that 10% under the illusion of 100% of focus and change, and called it the Civil Rights Act, sold that to the community and said, hey, here you go. We did it. Shut your mouth. Go back to work. We did it for you. So what that does is it waters everything down. It kills the actual movement. And for future movement, you can't really get away with that unless you bring to the surface what's really going on here. So the same way that they are watering down, they use certain movements to water down, they also use certain movements to install into the mainstream consciousness. So all of this LGBT stuff that's out there, that was sold, that's being sold into society right now through your actors, your musicians, your politicians, including your presidents, your everybody that's out there in this movie, this giant movie. They're selling this stuff in there so they can protect themselves. If they legalize this pedophilia shit, then how many of these criminals who are guilty of all this nonsense for decades, going back generations, how many of them are going to get off because of the way it's perceived in society? So when they mix, like I said, and they water it down to create a perception within the society, so a negative and a positive perception in the society. What you're looking at right now is the way the system utilizes these programs and watering down and blending all of these movements, supposed movements, to change your perception of the society to benefit the people within the control booths of that manipulative society. So they tell you if homosexuality is okay, so is pedophilia. A former Oklahoma City mayor says this on television. There have been a number of articles and little memes here and there that talk about how this is happening. This asshole actually said it, not just in public, but on television. So you have to see that this is the extremes that this system is willing to go in order to maintain its dominance over the people. It has zero concern, zero connection with universal laws, zero connection with any kind of humanity. It will lie to you from the ground up until you defend it, to a point to where you're defending lies and crimes that break universal laws. They did this when they installed heliocentrism into the mainstream consciousness. They're doing it today with transhumanism, simulation theory, and all this other technological bullshit that they're installing into your community. And like I've been saying, in reference to, I forgot about this until now, making you believe into the system. I try to kind of keep this as short as possible. I've already gone as far. Already gone probably like an hour or something. Anyway, I just watched another episode. I finished actually the episode of a Black Mirror on Netflix, and it was the episode with the soldiers. I'm gonna give some spoilers with that episode. So if you're like huge on that, just click off and then come back. Watch the rest of the video. But that episode, if you don't care, just this is how I see that episode. That episode, the basic premise was the soldiers get a microchip installed into their brain, and what it does is it affects the way you see certain people. You see them as these aliens, these zombies. They look like nasty aliens. Like they're literally, their entire bodies change. You can't hear their voices. It sounds like shrieks. Everything. It's changed the way you perceive your reality. This is what the military has done with the soldiers. This is all in this Black Mirror episode. So if you find yourself interested in it, in order to add on to the perspectives that I'm sharing with this video, go check it out. But anyway, keep in mind, this is exactly what's happening, not to just to soldiers, but to people. This happens to soldiers when they go to war and they have to see these other human beings as nothing, including children. Yet you have to see them as animals, as parasites. You have to see them like that. That's how these soldiers are being mind controlled, trained. Every day they wake up in the morning, they got to do PT or physical training. They got to get out there and run. When you're running to the cadence, what kind of cadence do you think they're listening to every day? It's basically kill a motherfucker, kill a motherfucker, kill him, kill a motherfucker, kill a motherfucker, kill him. Just on and on and on about killing people. That's what this cadence is every day. That's an alchemy. That's an alchemy. They're making you love that system. And when they're making you love that system, they're making you take a pride in that system. When you have a pride in that system, you start defending that system. That's not only how the system makes soldiers do that. That's how the system makes civilians do that. That's what's happening every day. So then in this episode of Black Mirror, they just turned it into a real thing where a real microchip was installed into, whereas this is happening without any kind of microchips. People are already hating Muslims because of what Fox News has told them. People are already hating so-called black people because of what the mainstream media has projected us as. People are already hating different people all over the world. North Korea, this country, that country, that country. Hating. You're completely bombarded by the hatred, which is the other side of pride. You're bombarded with that so that you don't trace the origins of the original storyline. You are bombarded with so much pride, so much hatred. So much pride and so much hatred in this system, this illusion, this distraction, that you don't even allow yourself. That pride and that hatred, that emotional body and that pride will simply not allow you to see the system as anything other than what it is. It's projecting it as, You can't see it as anything other than what it's projecting itself as. How is that any different than installing a microchip into your brain so that you will see other people as roaches, what they call them, roaches. In there, they brought them up because they called them roaches. They broke it down. I won't take away too much of it, but it had something to do with the DNA, had something to do with, the way they think, the way they act, whatever it is. This is no different than what so-called Western civilization did to the indigenous people. They said that they are criminals inherently, just from being born. They are primitive, savage heathens that need to be civilized. Here's your book. Here's your society. Here's your way of life. And if you do anything other than what we have just given you, you will be prosecuted to the highest of their illusory laws. You will be prosecuted. And if you say anything against what we have just told you is the best way to experience your reality, you will be taken out, or whatever it is, in any kind of way. So that's what this that's what that Black Mirror episode was about. And that's how the system, it's not just about the soldiers killing people. This is how you perceive your reality. You see other people. Some people see black people, so-called black people, as roaches. Some people see Muslims as roaches. Some people see anybody who doesn't believe themselves into the Western society, so-called Western civilization, they see them as roaches, old, out of date, dead roaches that need to be civilized, westernized, and taken to the umpteenth degree. They'll take them out. What do you think these drone strikes are? Going into Iraq, talking about WMDs, taking out Gaddafi. They saw Gaddafi as a roach. Why? Because Gaddafi was unifying Africa outside of the Rothschild dollar and the Rockefeller way of life. They were going to unify all of their resources, which will, in that same moment, not only challenge the Western so-called civilization, but completely cut the legs out from that. So they had to attack the most powerful nation in Africa. They had to attack Gaddafi and cut the legs out of that shift. That's exactly what they did. If it's that easy in their chess game, they'll do it. And that's what they did, because they have zero concern for you or the system or anybody else. The only concern is preserving its own existence. This is the war on every man, woman, and child. It's not based upon one perspective of race or sex. No, it's all of these systems together. This is why I talk about all these different perspectives and lump them together as one. Heliocentrism is a mind control program. Racism is white supremacy is a mind control program. Education system, conspiracy theories, these are all mind control programs. If you can't differentiate between how they are their own thing and are simultaneously one thing, then there's some more work that needs to be done. And I'm helping people as like I would like to have been helped when I was researching a lot of this information, which is why I do what I do. So heliocentrism, when I talk about the Black Mirror, the racism programming, the politics programming, you can see it easily what's going on here. People who don't believe in the heliocentrism, who flat earthers, you're considered a roach too. You're a roach. And if they want to take it as far, they'll take you out. But right now, how I'm seeing it, they want to use flat earth to sell in this next mind control program. So they'll only utilize you as being roaches right now, so they can adopt it, co-opt it later on. But ultimately right now, you're going to take the hit until people start waking up. Once people start waking up, that's when they have to co-opt it. Because then when the status quo shifts from people realizing the illusions that have been put out, they can't be seen as roaches. They'll be seen as roaches. Once the status quo, the majority of people start to realize the illusions, that's when the power changes. That's when the system has to adjust, fire, and co-opt. Otherwise, they will fall subject to the mind they will fall subject to basically the truth, and they will lose their power. They will lose their control. This is why it's so beneficial for this program to co-opt everything that's going along with the consciousness of the people. Otherwise, they're not going to be able to, they're not going to be able to maintain any of the mind control programs that are supposed to be carrying out themselves for, decades into the future. And that's how this system works, by installing those programs into your future timeline. So these are priests. These are priests for the heliocentric religion. And no different than Christianity or any of the other mainstream religions, you have people defending it. And the reason why it's so difficult to get, it's more difficult to speak to somebody about this, is because it attacks many layers of what the individual thinks he or she is. It attacks a lot of those layers, the belief systems of who and what they are. Not just one. See, when you start bringing different perspectives of your reality to somebody who believes in one religion, they can entertain that a lot more easily, a lot of the times, than they can entertain something like flat earth. Because people are aware that it's a belief system, and people are also aware that other people have different belief systems. So that inherently makes it unstable. So when that's there, then people are more open to other things. In reference to heliocentrism, the illusion of that, and flat earth, you're not only attacking people's scientific observations of their reality, you're attacking their belief systems of who and what they are, where they came from, what they pride themselves in. Pretty much every single layer of their reality, including their spiritual connection, like religion, to this experience. So it's like 10 times more impactful when you're bringing this information to an individual than just something as simple as, religion. I mean, it's not that simple, but when you talk about this, you can see how complex it is. So you'll have people that it's going to be 10 times more difficult, I'm seeing, just for example purposes, to talk about this stuff. So a war against a foreign country only happens when the moneyed classes think they're going to profit from it. So this goes in reference to the Gaddafi stuff I just mentioned. All this Gaddafi stuff that went down, that's because the bigwigs said, we need to put a stop to this now. Otherwise, it's going to affect us in the long run. Boom. They make their move. Beyond that, this is just another slide that I was going to show in reference to the world tungsten mines that I thought I was going to go deep into, but I'm not going to go into anymore, because you can just look it up for yourself. But I just wanted to share an observation of what's going on with this whole North Korea stuff from a perspective of what Baba Dick Gregory was sharing. I think it was like a few years ago, in reference to, I'm not going to play the video. You can check it out yourself if you just want to look at where he was coming from. He still had a heliocentric thing in there in reference to they're using tungsten to build spaceships. But ultimately, it boils down to the reserves, like your elemental reserves of this reality. I think I have a slide. Like it goes down to like the resources. So the United States doesn't have much tungsten in itself. Like China has the majority of it, and then you have North Korea, which has a huge mine or mines of tungsten, and tungsten is used in what they're calling spaceships and so on and so forth. But how I'm seeing it, how I broke it down, is technology. Technology is a big part of the future. Technology is going to be used to sell people into the next mind control program. So if China is a superpower and they already have all the tungsten that's going to be used for whatever kind of spaceships or technology or whatever it's going on, then that's a power in resources, and they have to have control of that. Not only that, but strategically, if they move if they attack North Korea, well, first of all, there's a benefit in war overall because they just, move bigger pieces around when they have full reign to do whatever they want. Because we're at war, they just make their own laws. But look how many of the Patriot Act and all that other bullshit that came out after the war on terrorism. How many laws and regulations you think are going to come out after World War III? So this is the design inherently. That's like the macrocosm. The microcosm in that, in reference to the moves, the money moves, is stuff like they already have military bases. The United States, the Western Empire, pretty much owns South Korea after the Korean War. Now, they won't only have a stronghold. See, that's like with Hawaii. Hawaii, when they took over Hawaii from King Kamehameha, like that whole thing, that wasn't just for resources. That was a military move. They own Hawaii. That's why they got all those military bases there, because that is a defensive move in between the other superpower, which is Asia, or China to be more specific, to have that facade of, what's going on. Anyway, these are military moves. South Korea, that was a military move. Pearl Harbor, that was a military move. Both sides of the war being played, these are military moves to maintain the facade of this entire program. The military move that is this North Korea shit with Trump and everything that's going down in this whole World War III, this Russia thing. Like, they need Russia to be an enemy. They need enemies to have superheroes. That's what Russia is. You got an enemy and a superhero. You got a villain and a superhero. You can make people believe that they live in a heliocentric universe. You can give them the idea of proof with pictures of the Earth from the moon. Like all this nonsense. This is how far you can go into the consciousness of the people once you have triggered their emotional body based upon the very nature of their existence in this experience. This is how far you can go with making them believe themselves into a certain thing, a certain way, and so on and so forth. So I'll close this out. Not only the tungsten that's there, but that's a military move. If they can unify, that's what they'll do this shit too. They'll tell you, oh, we're unifying Korea and making it a better country. They'll have more rights and they'll have all this shit. Like, they'll switch from North Korea to, like, oh, look at this new and improved North Korea. It's more like South Korea now. South Korea, produces Samsung and all this other stuff. Like, all these things, they're going to sell it to you like it's some great thing. Like they did somebody a favor. Who's doing more harm to the world? North Korea or the United States? These little funky assholes running around talking about, oh yeah, we're going to give you some freedom. Sit your stupid ass down with all that bullshit. These simple ass people, they're laughing in people's face. Putting Trump up there, even Hillary Clinton, that's a joke. And they have to play that joke because it's always been a joke. And if they could throw it in your face like that, and people still ain't gonna say anything about it, still gonna play it like it's got something real. That's why they play those political slides I was showing earlier. They play that stuff to see how far they can go. And they can go a long way because there's a lot of indoctrinated ass people out there. So anyway, you have the tungsten, you got the military benefits of putting military bases in North Korea and South Korea. You have the benefit of having the facade of like spreading democracy and taking out an evil dictator in North Korea. You got all this shit. Same thing that happened with Hitler, knowing that the empire as a whole was playing both sides of both world wars. What do you think they're going to do with the Third World War? And what do you think the intent is with the Third World War? It's the same thing. So all of this is very beneficial to the system as a whole. All of this is very beneficial. And when the dust settles, what do you think is going to happen after that? China's going to get involved. Russia's going to get involved. Boom. You have talks between the three superpowers of this entire earth. What do you think is going to happen once the people start getting fed up with this nonsense? They're going to ask for the new world order. They're going to be salivating at the mouth. They're just going to be so like, please make this better. No more war. Oh, you want us to make this better for you? Oh, okay, here you go. Sign on the dotted line. But those aren't dots on the dotted line. That's a contract. The actual line is a contract. No different than the checkbook that you have. Look at your check. Some people don't know this. Some people do know this. If you look at your checks in your checkbook where you're supposed to sign, that's not a line. Those are words. That's a statement on that line. It's a contract. The line itself is a contract. The line itself is a contract. And that's what's going on with asking your enslavers to make a better world for you. You're going to get what you asked for. Because you signed a contract thinking you was going to get something based upon what the contract said, but you didn't read the actual line that you were signing on. That's the actual contract. The very line that you signed is the contract. Not what the contract says. The line itself actually says something. What does that mean? So, this other one, Trump signs $700 billion defense bill. People like Seth Meyers, Trevor Noah, Jon Stewart, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, all these late night talk show hosts, conspiracy theorists, MSM, mainstream media, the alternative news, all these people are designed to make you accept this reality, desensitize you from the deeper layers of perceiving this reality, and simultaneously sell in the next program to you. And shut you up because you just laugh it away like it's a joke. These individuals, like this asshole that you're looking at right now, is just designed to make you submit, to desensitize you, to dumb you down, and to install your belief systems with comedy, with triggering your emotional body. And they'll put these garbage ass people out in front of you in order to amplify the hopelessness, not only of the individual, but the collective as a whole. This, you got to ask yourselves, like, inherently you're asking yourself, is this the best we can do? Because you think this we shit includes them. It doesn't. That's a movie. You're not included in that movie. You're not in the credits. You're not even allowed to be in the credits because you are a roach to be exterminated, to be used as a battery for as long as possible, and to be exterminated. And they will use these individuals to make you love that program and help this system exterminate anybody and anything that challenges the very nature of this system. And ultimately, what it boils down to is, how far are you willing to go? Like, what are you willing to question in your reality? Because this system is it's already chosen. It's already made its stance in what it values in this reality. It's already told you what it's going to do by what it's already has done. So that's pretty much what I have for this video. I miss anything? Let's see. Tungsten, technology, separation, destroying the connections, destroying the bridges, installing new connections. So like all these connections that I was saying in reference to, like some of the indigenous people that they were connected to, like earth, the spirit, the soul, the mind, the body, and in a way that Western society can't even comprehend right now. Like once that's a bridge of consciousness. It's a bridge of spirit. Once those bridges are broken and burned, like what has happened with the Western society, that leaves a gap in your reality. Those gaps are filled with heliocentrism, the education system, Western politics, Western cosmology, Western everything, racism, all this, all these beliefs in this system. That's what fills your reality. Distraction, desensitization, all of these emotional body triggers and intellectual mind control programs are the gap fillers from the bridges that have been burned in previous generations. So those are the bridges, like I explained, between the mother and the father, the masculine and the feminine, people to people, internationally, people connecting with other people. Those bridges are inherently burned by the system because of the way it's designed. You have, in that separation, people separating themselves from culture, their children, their future generations. Like I said, the life expectancy outside of this system is shrunk down to 3 days in the modern society, whereas indigenous cultures were cognizant of their responsibility to the society that is 7 generations from now. That's a difference in your entire existence, moving from living your life every day based upon protecting this everything, all the balances within this reality based upon 7 generations from now, as opposed to 3 days. In fact, once it gets down to 3 days, you're not even cognizant. You don't even care about what's going on. You're not even aware of it. You're just floating around, hoping that you don't die. Whereas there's a meaning and purpose to having a responsibility to protecting not only your values, your experience, your culture, your observations of this reality for 7 generations out. There's something more that's there. And there's very definitely something less when that gets taken away. And like I said, it's not something that's taking it away. It's a very complex alchemy that's allowing the people to lose it, allowing the people to let that go, allowing the people to replace those connections with something that has zero concern with any kind of balance, zero concern with any kind of universal connections. So that's what I wanted to share with this video. Just wanted to break down a little more of like how this enslavement program works and the whole idea of this Western protagonist, like, oh, this Western, you can't really entertain anything that challenges Western society until you first recognize that the system has set itself up to be the protagonist. It is your superhero inherently. So this is why these are the people who defend that. Barack Obama was probably the biggest one to defend the Western civilization as the protagonist of the human experience. And these are just the little piddly assholes that are doing it on a regular, everyday basis. Seth Meyers, Stephen Colbert, John Oliver, Donald Trump, Alex Jones, Cenk Uygur, TYT, conspiracy theorists here, conspiracy theorists there. And overall, and specifically in the flat earth, so-called flat earth community, people who haven't done this work, who are still believing that the system isn't, it wasn't meant this way. It's just broken and we can fix it. And flat earth will probably fix it. As soon as it goes, mate, sit your ass down. Sit down, shut up for a moment, and start asking deeper questions. Start asking the right questions rather than asking these shallow ass questions. You ask shallow questions, you're going to get some shallow answers. And the only way you can ask deeper questions is if you do the work. If you don't do the work, you're going to be playing another illusion for yourself. So, yeah, that's it. This video will go on long enough. Thank you for joining me. Thank you again for all the support. I really do appreciate all the shares, the likes, everything. Thanks again. And from all my relations, until next time, peace, love, and harmony.